We only see Bathsheba 2 more times in the story of David, and they're fairly brief, but they're interesting. The next encounter with her, she's called Mother of Solomon. So she's still being defined by her relationship to men. But she has an interesting role at this stage. There are a whole lot of political infighting going on as David is dying, trying to work out who will be the successor to David. His oldest son Adonijah is playing some pretty clever political games, and the prophet Nathan comes and has a talk to Bathsheba and sends her in to talk to David to try to soften him up before Nathan comes. And so we get a little bit of a glimpse here of the importance of the role of one of the women in the harem. David has many, many wives, but at the moment it's Bathsheba who seems to have his ear. And she reminds him of his promise to make Solomon king, and in fairly clever ways points out that Adonijah is playing a whole lot of political games at the moment, and he needs to make a statement clearly saying that Solomon will be king. At this point, Nathan comes in and takes up the same story in a very, very clever way. Basically says, why did no one tell me that you've already named Adonijah king? I thought you would have let me know, your trusted advisor, but he's down there celebrating already. And of course, David is absolutely furious and names Solomon king immediately. So it's quite a funny little scene, but it is a lovely little picture into the role of a woman who is normally quite powerless politically. And here is Bathsheba playing it well. So the voiceless woman who was acted on earlier is starting to find a role. The next time we see her, again, she is Solomon's mother, and she is approached by Adonijah to intervene with Solomon and to ask him for a favour. Solomon denies it, but it reminds us that in the ancient Near East, women who belonged very much to the sphere of the harem and were closed out of political power could still actually be quite strong women, and the mother of the king had quite a definite part. And Bathsheba here is playing her part as she should. She is someone who seems to have grown through even the little bits of story that we know about her. One of the things that she could do was help ease the transition from one king to another so that there wasn't massive bloodshed. What would often happen is the king would name one of his sons as his successor, and instantly there would be war as all of the other sons fought each other. Part of what Bathsheba did with Nathan was make sure that the next king was named clearly so that there would be less of that. And then helping ease some of the political processes. There's something very interesting about Bathsheba, I think, even though we don't know much about her. We see from this woman who is purely acted on to just these glimpses of her finding her place and finding her voice. So she might be wife of Uriah, David's wife, mother of Solomon, but I like to think she ends up very much her own woman. Certainly Matthew, I think, thought so. The fact that she's there is saying something to us, and there is something that this grandmother is passing on in the gene pool that ends up with Jesus. I wonder what you think that is. Who are some of the women you've admired? Who are some of the women who found a voice for themselves when maybe life around them didn't give them much of a voice? Who are some of the women that you look up to as having fought for the good of the community? Perhaps you might like to honour Grandmother Bathsheba by discussing that for a little while.